Howdy, y'all. Welcome to the EEARSS Podcast, produced here at Terrier TV. Produced at Terrier TV. Did I? What
there you
am I-
go. Or,
Oh, my
there.
garage. It's what happens when it's the first time back on an episode. You can't
That's
even get
right.
the words out of your mouth correctly.
Yep.
So let's try this again. Howdy, y'all, and welcome to the EEARSS Podcast, produced here at Terrier TV by the students and us humans that are here at Titusville High School.
There we go.
Man, Bill, this is episode 1 of season 4. It's crazy to think about. We started this. We've done 3 complete seasons, and we are literally on season 4.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
It's been, like 2.5 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, how time flies, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. It's amazing.
It's interesting to think about. We were chatting a minute ago, kind of catching up with things we've been doing while the summer happened.
Right.
And you mentioned the Fly Me to the Moon movie, which
Yes.
whenever I was working on it was Project Artemis. That
Okay.
then turned into Fly Me to the Moon, which, okay, I interesting change.
Okay.
That's a pretty big flip-flop. Project
Right.
Artemis to Fly Me to the Moon. I can grasp the concept,
Mhm.
but that's a big change. But went and saw that movie.
Right.
It was remarkably good.
I'm kind of waiting for it to come out on Apple TV,
Yeah, makes sense.
and then I was going to watch it.
Makes sense. The scenes that I was there for and was there when they were recording play prominent roles throughout the film. It just went directions I did not expect it to go.
Okay.
I'm not going to throw any spoilers
Right.
out there, you know what I mean? Because I'm
Sure.
sure there's a lot of people that have seen it and some that have not, but it's neat to see something filmed on the Kennedy Space Center that you were part of come
Right.
together, and it's a really good movie.
Well, good. I was worried. My thing about just seeing the trailers for it was that it wasn't going to be respectful to the space program.
It is.
Okay. Okay.
It's you got to.
That was my worry.
So, it is respectful of the space program, but at the same time, it takes some pokes. It does take a few
Does it?
pokes,
Okay.
but it's a romantic comedy. I mean, it's
Right. Okay.
you can tell that they're having fun with it, but at the same time, there's some serious stuff to it.
Okay.
Yeah, it of course has its. Yeah, I can't get too much
Right. No,
into
you
it
don't want to
without
give
really
anything
giving
away.
anything away. but
Right. Exactly.
It is what it is. So to end,
Couldn't be anything else.
it's true. To end last season,
Right.
we had a podcast that had some technical
did.
difficulties. And today, for episode 1 of season 4, we get the blessing of redoing that podcast. Everybody
Right.
gets to hear. I am super duper excited about it.
Yes.
Because I think it was the best podcast that never was.
It was a really good interview. It was very interesting. And and to find out that I didn't press a button.
Buddy, it could happen to any of
And,
us. It happens to people all the
and-
time.
Yeah, but when we finished it, it was like, oh, this is great. And then it was gone. It was just in the ether.
Well, I waited probably a month and a half before I had the nerve to tell our guest that it didn't go through.
That it didn't go.
Yeah, I was like, man, how do I go? How do I?
Well, I was
Like,
glad.
I know he's not going to be upset, but how do I
Right.
break this to him? That his
Yeah.
podcast has never came out. He's
Yeah.
had to have noticed it at this point.
That whole thing that we were telling you about, well, we kind of messed it up. So
Oh Lord! All right,
and there's not really a we to it. It's me, man. I did it.
no, it was
God.
my fault too because I was distracting you. We were talking about
Yeah,
something.
it was there was something that we did that was out of the ordinary that we don't normally do,
It was.
and it just kind of took us out of the whole rhythm.
For the life of me, I couldn't tell you what that was.
I don't remember what it was either because it was odd. So
It was something weird
that we didn't think of.
Yeah. Anyhow, all right, I'm excited about redoing this. You ready to jump into
Yeah,
it?
let's do it.
So today on the podcast, we are joined by Hannes Botha out of South Africa. Hannes, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks a lot, Frank. It's always great to chat to you, man.
It is always a pleasure, sir. You've been an inspiration to me for a long time with the work you do, just the way you handle yourself, the way you live your life, and I mean you're doing some amazing things down there in South Africa. So tell us a little bit about where you live, what you do for a living, and we'll go from there.
Cool. Well, you shouldn't throw around words like inspiration and all of that. That it sort of packs the pressure on. to keep going. But yeah, man, thanks. I stay in South Africa, sort of like a 2 hours drive north of Pretoria, and I work for the Mpumalanga Nature Conservation Department, which is like a state fish and wildlife agency, and I'm the herpetologist. So only one in the department, just me. So I get to do a lot of stuff that nobody wants to be involved in. And that's fine with me, because so I get to work alone and do what I like and do what I love. And just like you guys always say, living the dream, man.
No doubt about it.
There
So,
you go.
Hannes, how did you get into doing what you're doing now? How did you get into that field, and what led you there?
Well, this is actually the most incredible thing when because I think about that often. How did I get into all of this? And it was just, I guess, being at the right place at the right time, and the universe came together. So there was a crocodile population at the research station where we lived in the Olifants River, and the Department of Water Affairs were going to build a dam wall there and flood the valley, flood the river type of thing. And there was a meeting that was going to be held, and one of us had to go. And I was the guy that was told, okay, well, you have to go because, none of us wants to go, so you have to go. So I did, and I attended the meeting, and right at the end of the meeting, one of the engineers said to me, well, is there anything that you guys are concerned about? And it was like right at the end of the meeting, and I wasn't that wide awake anymore. And suddenly I get asked this question, and the only thing I can think of is, well, I think there will be an impact on the crocodiles. And they went like, the room went like quiet, and they're like, oh, yeah, we never thought about that. Would you mind doing a study and figuring out the ecology of these things? And I was like, yeah, I can do that in like an afternoon's time or so. And that's how I got in, working with crocodiles. It ended up being like a 30-year project, instead of one afternoon. But yeah, so that's how I started off, by, being at a meeting where I was bored out of my mind, and then got asked a question and I had to answer quickly. And the answer just led me to working with Dr. Brady Barr from National Geographic, working with a great friend of ours, Prof. Lou Gillette, working with Russ, guys like that. Just incredible things just came out of that one sentence that I said. I think there might be an impact on the crocodiles.
And what, doing that study, what have you guys found over there? What kind of impacts did that have on the crocodiles?
Well, a lot of good things, but also a lot of not so good things. Like the lake was very narrow and looked like a river before they increased the height of the wall. And so the crocs were like, they had basking sites, they had nesting sites, and they had, a social structure where they would move around. The large ones would move to the breeding areas, and the smaller ones would move away. And it was really fascinating. And then when the whole of the river flooded, all of that just couldn't happen anymore, because they, for instance, the prime nesting area and basking area became a public fishing site. So nesting sites were affected really badly, because they now had to nest in areas that was not good for crocodile nesting, and they flooded. We get rains towards the end of the year, starting in October, but the really quite heavy rains during December and January, and that's when the nests have to hatch. And so, the dam, because the river doesn't flow anymore, it just pushes back all the way, and most of those nests just drown. So there's been a really harsh influence on the crocodiles. And the one thing that we didn't foresee was illegal fishing with gill nets. That just exploded, and crocodiles get stuck in the nets. They swallow the nets while they try and get the dead fish out of the nest to feed on, and so you end up losing like 4.5, 5 meter crocodiles, just because of that. And they also get killed because they're competing with the illegal fishermen. So a lot of bad things, but also on the other hand, they seem to have adapted. They still there. They still the population is still fairly sizable for this area. So it's going. I wouldn't say good, but they still there.
Very interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Whenever you first started working with crocodiles, because you'd been working with wildlife for a while before that, what was one of the biggest learning curves for you? You know, when you first started dealing with them, what was one of the hardest things to like maybe wrap your head around or get used to?
It was really being able to get my hands on a crocodile in a way that was safe enough to handle, because in South Africa there's not a whole lot of rules, but when it comes to working with wildlife, you must have a qualified vet with you, and there's a whole lot of requirements if you're going to sedate the animal. And so because of all of that, and we had a fairly limited budget, we just worked on the animals live, and that was one of the toughest things for me to get around, because in my career before that, I was part of teams that was capturing rhino and fairly large animals, but then you tranquilize these things, and it's quite buffalo. It's quite easy to just wake them up and just walk them into a crate, but you don't do that with a crocodile.
No.
Yeah, no, you do not do that with a crocodile. You're right. You're right.
Nope.
So
so that was a quick learning curve. That.
Okay, so I got a question here. Do you have all your fingers?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Do you have all your fingers?
Oh yes. Yep.
Toes
I
too?
think I'm
All
one of
fingers,
very,
all
very
toes?
few guys that still have 10 fingers.
Well, that's good. That's a good thing.
you and I first met Hannes at the Kennedy Space Center whenever we used to have the different meetings and talk about the alligator stuff we were working on and things we were doing, because Russ and Lou used to travel over there and catch crocs with you guys quite a bit. And I tell Russ often the impact and the influence that he's had on my life. You know, going back to school, getting my degree, looking at things more scientifically, and you're part of that. And I just it's such an honor to know you and see all these things you do. And one of my favorite things is whenever you and Russ sit down somewhere and start telling Africa stories, and some of these stories you guys have, you guys just have me rolling in laughter nonstop. One of the ones Russ likes to break out, which he broke out again at a dinner we had a couple of weeks ago, was about you guys out with Lou in a shallow area catching crocs in the very beginning, and there was this term which I've even heard you say it, and I say it every time I let an alligator loose. He's free. So can you possibly tell us a little bit about that story?
Yeah. I know why that's a story that Russ will repeat, because it was just so funny. This was like right in the beginning of the collaboration that was going on between all of us, and we had arranged for Lou and Russ to come to South Africa, and then we went straight to we were gonna catch these a couple of crocs just for them to show us, how they do it and what they look for and how they treat the animal and that kind of thing. And so I had arranged with a colleague of mine to bring a boat that we can work from, because we don't have the fancy airboats and things here. It's so we didn't even have our own boat at that time. So I arranged with somebody to bring a boat, and this guy arrives there, and there's this woman with him, and I'm like, "Who's this woman?" And he says, "I don't know. She pitched up at the office, and she said she was going to come with me." And so it turns out she's from a conservation NGO sort of department or something, and she had just invited herself along. She had heard that these famous Americans were coming here and showing us the ropes, and so she just came along to see what we were going to do. And so the first day was really, really hard, and it was hard for us and Lou to adapt to working in a totally different area than Kennedy, because where we were working, it's just totally, it isn't a swampy area, and it's a river, and it's full of dead trees, and it's full of rocks and boulders and things, and you have to follow the channel. You can't just go anywhere. So, and here's this woman on the boat, and so every time we managed to catch one, and we would drag it out and then work on the shoreline on the thing, and when we let it go, this woman would go free, and to the point where we got so distracted from all of this that at one point I forgot to measure the crocodile, and I only realized that I hadn't measured the thing, and we'd already let it go, and Russell was standing in the water, and the crocodile swam right between his legs. And so Russ looked up at me and he said, "What's the size of that one?" And I was like, "I have no idea. I don't know. We didn't measure the thing, and we didn't know each other that well then." And so he looked at me and he said, "Why didn't you measure it?" And the only answer that I could give was that we only measure every second animal that we catch, and this was the this was the one that we don't measure.
Right, it's every other one. Every other one.
Every other one. Yeah. No, but the go free thing was there's a whole lot of other stories that I don't think we should tell on the air, but yeah, that was it. It became like a that was the thing that we remembered from that trip.
Yep. Ever since you guys have told me that, every animal we catch for research, that's one of the things I say as soon as they're going away. Yeah, I've used it ever since. Yep. So it lives on.
No, if anybody is with me when we do this kind of thing, those are the words that nobody's allowed to say.
That's hilarious.
Oh no!
So you've told me a little bit about.
Brings back a whole lot of memories. Yeah.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. You've told me a little bit about things happening there in Africa. You guys, you deal with a lot more than just herps. I've heard you dealing with water buffalo, all kinds of interesting things. Like your typical day, what does it involve?
It depends really. We sort of just almost into springtime here now. So in wintertime, it's really quiet for us. We do office work and try and catch up on articles and reports and things like that. But summertime is interesting because there's always some kind of what we call problem animals here, but they're not really problems. They just wild animals that come into contact with people, and they have to be removed. And so I don't get to deal a lot with other wildlife in that sense of the word, but so I winter time I catch a lot of snakes and crocs as well. Is where we are situated. It's farming area, and it's irrigation farms. So they pump water from the reservoirs into smaller dams, and then from there they irrigate the lands. But there's always somebody that his job is to go and start the pump in the morning. So when it starts getting towards breeding time, these little youngster crocodiles, they get the message that they have to get out of the way of the big boys, and they take up residence in these small little ponds. And then the guy goes and starts the pump in the morning, and there's a crocodile lying there. So we get a frantic call usually and say, well, you better come and get this thing because I'm going to shoot it. And then so, depending on the situation, we might set a trap, or we might try and catch it with a line, or any way we can, really. And then just go and release it somewhere else. So that is, but the thing with the water buffalo and things that you're talking about is we do a lot of surveys as well. Especially in the summertime, because wintertime is really cold, but we push through. But on those warm summer evenings, there's hippo in the water, and there's buffalo crossing over the river, and you have to be aware of these things while you're also keeping an eye out for crocs. So it's interesting times. The last survey that we did was in this month, in August, I think about the 15th or so, and we ran into like a pod of crocodiles in really very shallow, muddy water, to the effect that they were just stuck there. They couldn't submerge or get away, and we were busy looking to count them and estimate sizes and things like that. And like the next minute, there was just this splash behind the boat, and there was a hippo with his mouth open. So we had to get out of there pretty snappy, because it's not good to stay around under those circumstances. But so these things happen, and it makes those long, cold nights of sitting in a boat and staring into the darkness all the more likable, because anything can happen.
Yeah, I remember you talking to me a couple of times about interactions with water buffalo. And, we're blessed over here in the United States where pretty much everything we have here runs away from you or doesn't want anything to do with you. It seems like from the stories you've told me, pretty much everything in Africa has a very different perspective or a different view on things.
Yeah, they just want to kill you.
You told me about going on a walk and coming across water buffalo, and then they have a totally different perspective on the way things are going on.
Yeah. I must correct you though. These aren't water buffalo. They Cape buffalo.
Oh, so, Cape buffalo. Gotcha. Okay.
Cape buffalo. Yeah, they're much worse. Water buffalo is much more in control of themselves. They don't have a temper like Cape buffalo. Cape buffalo is just, they don't like anybody else. And so I was this is when I was still quite more younger and good looking. So I was walking in an area where I knew there was buffalo. There's a couple of these stories, but where I knew there was buffalo, and I saw the buffalo standing. It was a cow, and she just gave me one look and she charged. And I didn't have anything with me, and I didn't have a rifle or anything with me. So and I this was like a thorn tree, like a forest of thorn trees. And I was just saying to myself, I'm not going to climb in a thorn tree. I have to figure out another way, but I cannot do this. And so I stood there waiting for her, and she was like 3 steps away when she committed to that charge, and she dropped her head down so that her horns was front and foremost. And at that point, I was standing behind a little tree that was probably like 5 centimeters wide or something like that. And I just turned away and just tried to stand behind this thing. And the horn actually caught my shirt when when it went by and broke off a button. And she realized that she'd missed me, and she turned around like right there and came back for a second charge, and I sidestepped again, and then she just kept on running. So I decided to walk back to the office, and I just sat in a chair in the office, and a couple of people said, "What's happened?" And I was just like, "Don't speak to me. I can't speak to you now. I just have to gather myself."
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So that was quite a close call.
What's it? So I know you're a crocodile, man. You're one of the rare people in the world that can literally say that and it be true. What's your next favorite thing over there to deal with besides crocodiles? I know the other day you deal with a lot of mambas, you deal with a lot of spitting cobras.
Yep.
What's your jam besides crocodiles?
I was just gonna say I have to say the snakes. I've grown to like them, and I think they like me too, because I every now and then I run into a bit of trouble with a really large snake, but it's all fun and part of the job, and so I don't take it too personally. But the other day we had a meeting here with all of my colleagues from the other provinces, and it was a crocodile. We were discussing crocodile monitoring projects and cooperation and things like that. And we also at the office, we have a ground hornbill breeding center where there's people that the ground hornbills lay 2 eggs and then only 1 egg hatch. So the guys from this project go and collect that second egg, and then they hatch it and they raise the chicken. So they try and boost the numbers because hornbills are very threatened. And so a colleague of mine wanted to go and see this breeding center. So we went there, and we're standing in the building, and the black mamba slithers in the door on his way to the storeroom. I think there's lots of rats and mice and things there because they have all these food items, to feed the birds. And so we're standing in a fairly small room, like 3 of us, with like a really large mamba, like 2 meters, and that would be short. That's like over 6 feet.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I can't let him get into the storeroom because that becomes really dangerous thing, because you have to unpack everything and you until you find him. And he had nothing with me, so I grabbed him by the tail and just pulled him out the door. And there was a bucket there, and I put him in the bucket and the lid on top. And so this colleague of mine was like saying, "Wow, I've never seen a ground hornbill from close up. So this is a lifetime experience for me, and I've never seen a black mamba." So this was also a first for him. And then we went and we released the thing. And he wanted to make a video of the release, and I said, I was telling him, I was saying, "Listen, this thing's going to come out of that bucket like something that's on fire, and so you must be ready. Set yourself up, and when you feel you're ready, you tell me, and I will open the bucket." And he's like, "Okay, yes, I'm ready." And this story will be fairly familiar to you guys when we get to the end. He's like, "I'm ready." Open the bucket, the thing comes out, sees the vehicle that we were traveling, and it goes right under the vehicle. And so, like the storeroom, that can't happen, because he'll get in the engine, or he'll somewhere get into the car, and we can't. So I had to run after it, grab it by the tail again, drag it away, get it to go in another direction. And eventually I turned to my friend and I say, "Well, you must have you have a very nice video." And he was like, "I didn't record any of it." The moment was too big.
Oh my gosh.
See, I'm not alone.
I saw a little bit of it. But
Oh, wow.
yeah. Oh man. Hannes, I am very thankful for you, buddy. I know it's late over there right now, and thank you so much for joining us, for chatting with us, for talking about, just I could sit and tell stories with you literally for a week, and we'd never get tired of one another. It's the greatest thing ever, and always such an honor to talk to you.
Oh, thanks, Frank, man. This is really, it's great for me too, and I love seeing the things that you get into, and I really I'm also really super proud that you're doing things and going on, and it's nice just chatting to you guys, man.
Very much, yeah.
Yes.
I'm looking very, very forward to the opportunity of getting you over here and catching an alligator or two with you.
That would be just great. I was just gonna say to you, we should get you over here so that we can sit around the fire and have a bit of a braai and sit out under the stars and swap stories.
Nothing would make me happier, Hannes. That's a trip I've always wanted to be able to make, and one day if I'm independently wealthy, that'll be the first place I go.
That's the first one. You're welcome. We sit under the African sky and we chat away through the night.
I'm looking forward to it, buddy. Thank you so much for taking the time, Hannes. Please tell your family, everybody, hey, and we'll catch up again soon, buddy.
Okay, thanks, Frank. Thanks. You guys must stay well, eh?
You too, Hannes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
What a guy. He is literally,
that's amazing.
You can sit down with him and tell stories. Just let him tell you stories for hours.
Yeah.
And he's just a great man. One of those people that I'm so proud to call a colleague. And just when I'm going over things, when I'm like, if I'm writing a paper, which I've been doing papers on capture, release, transport, things like that for the CSG.
Right.
He's one of the people I'll call and be like, hey, Hannes, give me your insight on this from the Nile crocodile perspective. And because he's caught alligators, he's caught crocodiles, he's been a little bit everywhere. Like, what do you see here? What can I change? What makes sense to you? What transfers over? Because
Sure.
he does it, he lives it.
Well, he's been doing it for, what do you say, 30 years?
Yep.
Wow. Yeah.
He's something else.
That's amazing.
I love that guy. He's something else. Hopefully we can get him back over here to Florida sometime soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bill, episode 1's in the book.
Episode 1 is in the book.
Is there actually a book?
No, there's not a book.
It's something online somewhere.
It's in the imaginary book.
Blueberry. It's Blueberry.
Blueberry.
Yeah, Blueberry. All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in to episode 1 of the EEARSS Podcast, season 4. Man, it's crazy. Think about I actually do have a thumb, even though it doesn't look like I have one there. It's a magic trick. Thank you all for tuning in. We're looking for sponsors for the EEARSS Podcast. If you might be interested in getting your name, business, whatever's going on, out in front of a average of 3,500 to 5,500 people a week, give us a buzz. We would love to help you help us help you. We'll catch you all next week. We'll see you. Bye-bye.